Sun-drenched chaos versus frozen precision. Getting your motorcycle license in Brazil means surviving the urban jungle, mastering tight cones, and conquering the heat. But step into the freezing wilds of Sweden and you're dodging ice, mastering high-speed braking, and passing the world's strictest safety tests. Two totally different worlds, each with its own ultimate challenge. What does it really take to conquer both? What are the costs involved? Let's find out. Hello there, Ocus Pocus Motos here. In today's video, we'll be comparing the differences in getting the motorcycle drive license in Brazil and in Sweden. Since this is my situation right now, I used to have a Brazilian motorcycle driver's license and now I'm in the process of getting a Swedish driver's license. So I thought that a video explaining the differences within the processes would be interesting to share here on YouTube. Let's get started. In Brazil, the basic requirements for you to start this process is that you have to have 18 years old minimum. Even for mopeds, you need to know how to read, how to write. You have to have a valid registered individual taxpayer registry number and a document with your photo that also needs to be valid. In Sweden, it's a little bit more complex than that. You have to have a permanent residency here, or you have to be studying here for at least 6 months to be able to apply. You also have many different divisions within the A category for a driver's license here for motorcycle. You have the AM, A1, A2, and the A that encompasses all of these that I mentioned before. AM motorcycle is for you driving mopeds, and this you can apply from age 15. The A1, it's light motorcycle, a motorcycle that it goes maximum 125 cylinders and a maximum of 11 kilowatts. From age 16 you can apply and start driving that if you pass the exams. The A2 is for medium motorcycles. You can apply from age 18. And you finally have the A category that encompasses the AM, A1 and A2 categories, that it's for driving heavy motorcycles and all sorts of types of motorcycles. You can apply it from age 24. Yes, it's quite late comparing to the other countries, but there is a reason for that. I'm going to explain later. But there is an exception for that case. You can also apply if you're 20 years old and you've had the A2 license for at least 2 years. So next topic, the Brazilian process steps. We can see here there are 6 steps. The Swedish one is slightly more complicated and complex as always. But the Brazilian process steps for you to get the driver's license are basically you're going to open the application request through the Detran. Detran, it's the organization that organizes traffic and transportation in Brazil. And each state in Brazil is going to have your own Detran. And then slightly changes and variations on the costs and certain small rules can apply depending on which state you're living, but roughly you're going to pay 500 reais to be able to open an application and start your process of getting your motorcycle driver's license in Brazil. So 500 reais, this is basically 1,000 Swedish kroner, roughly, and roughly 100 euros. It's a pretty good affordable price in my opinion, especially if you compare here to Sweden. Number 2, you have to make some health exams. So they're going to evaluate your eyesight. They also make a psychological evaluation. And lately they added a toxicologic test to the requirements too. And all of this is going to cost you between 500 to 900 reais. Maybe a little bit more, depending on which city, which state do you live. 900 reais, that's going to be around 2,000 kroner, 200 euros roughly. Then you have the theoretical course. Back in the day, when I took my driver's license 12 years ago in Brazil, it was mandatory for you to be enrolled in a driving school that was affiliated to the state program. Nowadays, they removed this item. It's not mandatory for you to be enrolled on the driving school anymore. You can study by yourself or you can study for free as an option that they have in the government website, in the government platform, which is quite a nice change because I remember that in my times, I had to have a minimum amount of hours. It was like 20 hours that I had to complete, and it was extenuating process because you have to book the time, in the driving school. You have to go there, put your digitals to confirm that you were there watching those lessons. So it was more extenuating. Now it only depends on you. You make your own schedule, just studying as much as you can at home, online. It's much easier than on my time, so that's a very good positive change in my opinion. Then you go to number 4, practical training. Right, once you pass the theoretical course, in my time you have to wait to pass a theoretical course, but I think that certain states now they made the change. You can do the practical training even if you haven't concluded the theoretical course. If I'm not mistaken, certain states they allow this. Then the practical training, the minimum hours that you have to have, it's 2 hours nowadays. In my times used to be 20 hours of practical training too, but now they removed this mandatory 20 hours, and you just have to have a minimum of 2-hour training. You can train privately. This is also a recent change because in my times you had to be in a driving school. Nowadays you can just hire a private instructor and do the 2-hour minimum training. The cost is going to be around 400 reais, which is 800 kroner, 80 euro roughly. Then you have the theory test that costs around 60 reais, 120 Swedish kroner, around 12 euros to make, and the practical test that costs around 100 reais, which is 200 Swedish kroner and 20 euro for you to make. But there are also hidden costs into this because if you don't have a motorcycle yourself, you have to rent a motorcycle from the driving school. There's also this to take into consideration. So the total cost for you of this entire process in Brazil are going to be around 1,460 reais, 1,500 reais, which is going to be around 3,000 Swedish kroners, 300 euro. It's an excellent price, right? So this is in Brazil. Now let's see in Sweden. So first of all, step 1, you have to apply for a learner's permit that they call here körkortstillstånd. Once you apply, this is for free. You can apply for free. And this application is valid for 5 years. After that, you have to make an eye test, and this is going to cost you around 200, 300 Swedish kroners. I paid 200 for my eye test. After you do the eye test, you go to the third step, which is the risk education. Here in Sweden, it's mandatory that you go through 2 risk education courses. Risk 1 and Risk 2, how they call it here, Risk 1 and Risk 2. Basically, Risk 1, it's a theoretical course that you're going to be sitting on the classroom and your motorcycle instructor is going to be talking about all the risks that involve driving a motorcycle, the type of risks that can come from fatigue, drug use, alcohol use, from interacting with the other drivers and everything. They also talk a little bit about the equipment, about the gear. It's very complete, a theory of what you need to understand about risks. And they do this for a reason. It's because here in Sweden they have something called Nollvisionen. The name is Zero Vision. Attention, it's zero vision, not Eurovision. They have this vision that we are going to have 0 traffic accidents in Sweden. And this really worked so well because they implemented this in the 90s. And since then, the number of traffic accidents sank dramatically, and it is so low comparing to other countries. Even here in Europe, if you compare to Russia or to Poland or to Croatia, you're going to see the Sweden score way lower on the ranking of traffic accidents. And this is because they make the process for you to get the driver's license way more complicated here. They condition your brain in all these courses. They are mandatory that you have to drive in a more defensive way. They show you accident pictures, videos, and everything. They really want to cause an impression, so you think twice, you think 3 times before doing something very improvised and very risky on traffic. The cost is around 1,000 Swedish kronor. It's valid for 5 years. The Risk 2, it's more practical. You're going to go to a track and you're going to learn how to handle certain situations, risky situations on the road. So if it's slippery on the road because of little stones or because of leaves or because it's wet or because it's snowy, they make you ride your motorcycle in slippery conditions. They make you test braking at high speed, lower speed, for you to have a notion of how much distance you have to keep from another vehicles. Because usually we think about something, oh yes, I'll be able to brake, but in practicality you see that it demands a lot of rapid reflexes, rapid action. You have to have the right technique to brake in order to be effective and stable. So yeah, in this risk 2 course, that's exactly what you're going to learn. You also have the option to drive without one hand, so you try without any hand, so you become more intimate with the motorcycle. It's quite interesting, and I became a much better driver after that. I think that it was amazing. It's just that it costs a lot of money because they provide you a motorcycle, it's an enclosed space, so it needs to be a big space. It was 3,500 Swedish crowns, around 350 euro. 1,700 reais probably. That's more than what the entire process for you to get on a motorcycle in Brazil costs. So that's why you have to realize things get really expensive here in Sweden. Next step, which are the theory lessons. And you have the option that you can study by yourself and don't pay anything, or you can get yourself an app with certain simulation questions so you can simulate that you are doing the theoretical test. And certain driving schools also provide like an online system where you can study this theory question. This is going to cost you around 1,000 Swedish kroner in case you get the apps or you get the driving school platform and able to be studying. Next step, it's the 5th step, riding lessons. So you can do this privately here in Sweden, or you can do in a riding school. If you do this privately, this person that's going to be tutoring you, it needs to be an approved supervisor, at least 24 years old, and it needs to have held a Swedish driver's license for at least minimum of 5 years. The motorcycle's driver's license, of course. And it can be the Swedish driver's license or also from a country that it's EEA, from the European agreement here that they have. If you do in a riding school, this is going to cost you roughly 1,000 Swedish crowns, 100 euros, right, per lesson. And the maneuvering lessons are more expensive. They range from 1,500 Swedish crowns to 3,000 Swedish crowns, 300 euros per maneuver lesson. And these are the lessons you're going to need the most, because in order for you to pass on the low speed track maneuvering and high speed track maneuvering tests, you have to have those skills. And it requires you a huge space for you to train, because at a certain speeds you cannot be training this in a small garage or parking lot. In my case, I had to pay because I wanted to have access to the track where I'm going to do my practical exam, so I can train, create neural paths and muscle memory to do the best I can to acquire these skills. And in the moment I do my exam, I'm just know what I'm doing and I don't get nervous, and my body automatically knows what to do. Besides that, you have also theory tests. It's going to cost you around 420 Swedish crowns. If you do on the weekends or in the evenings, they cost a little bit more, 520 Swedish crowns. And you also have to pay for a photo of you that's taken, which is 120 Swedish crowns, and this is going to be valid for a year. After you do that and you're approved, you can book your practical test, your körprov, your uppkörning, where it's basically a safety control on the motorcycle, a low-speed track maneuvering test, a high-speed track maneuvering test. If you passing those, you're going to go to the city traffic and they're going to see how you drive there. But we'll talk about that soon when we compare both Brazilian and Swedish practical tests, okay? There's also a license manufacturing fee that you have to pay of 375 SEK in case you pass on the exam. The total costs can range from 7,000 kroner, roughly 7,200 kroner, if you do everything privately. If you find a friend, a family member that can teach you privately on their own motorcycle. They're not going to charge you anything. You know, you just have to pay the mandatory fees and mandatory courses. Then this is going to cost you 7,200 kroner, 720 euros, right? This is around 3,000 and a half reais. It's two times what costs for you to get your motorcycle license in Brazil. But if you need lessons, if you need motorcycle lessons, if you need to learn how to drive in your own city, so in the moment of the exam you know which roads you're driving, if you need to do the maneuvering lessons, it's going to add up pretty quickly. You also have to get a motorcycle to do the tests. Someone can lend you a motorcycle, or you are going to rent it from a driving school. The optimal thing is that you do the practical exam with the same motorcycle you've been training, but it can be well over 25,000 Swedish kroner for you to get your driver's license, motorcycle driver's license here in Sweden, in case you have to pay for those lessons on a driving school. Now let's talk about the theory exam. In Brazil, the theory exam, it's a multiple choice test with 30 questions, and you have to score at least 70% of it. So you have to have 21 questions are answered correctly in order for you to pass. In Sweden, you have 70 questions, also multiple choices, but 5 of the 70 questions are just test questions. So it's actually 65 questions. There are the amount of questions they are going to be counting. You have to score 52 out of these 65 questions. Well, let's talk about the differences between the practical exam in Brazil and in Sweden. The practical exam in Brazil evaluates specific maneuvers, like you have the figure of 8, slalom, emergency stop, all inside an enclosed painted course. In Sweden, the practical test is divided within 4 to 5 parts. You have the safety control, you have the low speed track maneuver test, the high speed track maneuver test with the braking tests, and a road test in the city traffic. Here, as you can see, the circuit in Brazil, this is in Rio de Janeiro, because from state to state, this circuit changes slightly, but not very much, because they require basically mostly the same skills from state to state. But I took the one from Rio because that's the one that I made. That's where I'm from. It's very important that you don't double tap the floor when you leave to start your exam, because they consider this to be that you're not so balanced, you're kind of insecure, so you cannot double tap the floor. Certain moments of this course you cannot use too much the brakes, you have to use more the clutch, so they can see that you can control the clutch. It's not allowed for your motorcycle to the wheels to touch any part of this border lines. Your feet also cannot touch the border line, especially when you're doing the final leading slalom after you park the motorcycle. The only equipment required for you to do the Brazilian practical test is the helmet. Your helmet cannot be loose, otherwise they don't let you pass on the exam. It's not even required gloves or jacket or anything, just the helmet. So let's see here. How is it? Once you get the okay to start, you're going to put on your helmet. Make sure that it's very well closed and fastened. You're going to mount the motorcycle, start the motorcycle, checking the lights, checking the mirrors, close your visor, remove the quick stand, and put on the first gear so you can go towards the slalom. Right before the first cone, you have to have the second gear, and from now on you cannot touch any of these marks on the ground, neither the cones. You're going to accelerate to get the plank, then you're going to slower the speed so you can make this very sharp turn and do the zigzag, turning on the blinkers. Then you're going to enter the figure of 8. Once more, remember to not touch any of these markings on the ground. And when you're preparing to leave the figure of 8, you're going to put on the third gear. Once you leave, you're going to arrive at the first line on the floor, then you lower to the second gear, lower to the first gear, stop the motorcycle completely, park the motorcycle, Then you're going to remove the quick stand to lead the motorcycle on the slalom. Right here, you cannot touch the cones. Your feet and the motorcycle cannot touch the markings on the ground. Once you've finished, you're going to park the motorcycle again and remove your helmet and wait for the results. So as you can see, the Swedish practical test, it's slightly more complex. You have the safety control where you have to show them that you know where the brakes are and how they're functioning. You have to taste the brakes lights, look if the motor oil is good, if the brake fluids are good, if the motorcycle is aligned, if the tires have any sort of puncturing or anything wrong. You have to kind of prove them that you are able to access safety if the motorcycle is safe for riding or not. And after that, if you pass, if you're approved on that step, you go to the low speed and high speed maneuver tracks. Low speed track maximum 5 kilometers per hour and the high speed track minimum of 50 kilometers per hour. And then you have, of course, the brake part. Low speed maneuver track, they can choose if you're going to start from point A or from point B. You have to train both ways. You have to train mirroring because the examiner is going to determine which side you're going to go. You have to be maximum 5 kilometers per hour. You cannot be quicker than that, okay? And you have to do this trajectory here very well. So you start leading the motorcycle towards the point B because you can see that the cones are positioned to the right. So you have to get your motorcycle there. You can step on the lines, but the motorcycle cannot touch the lines on the ground. You're going to mount the motorcycle, take a deep breath, and then start riding towards that cone. It's going to make a turn in this first cone, then you're going to very slowly get to stop in between those two cones over there and put one of your feet on the ground, at least one of your feet on the ground. Stop the motorcycle completely, then restart very slowly, going to surround this other cone over there very patiently and stabilizing the motorcycle because it's so slow you have no idea. Sometimes it shows 0 kilometers per hour on the visor there on the monitor. You're going to stop in between the second cones there, make this turn. You cannot touch that line over there. Come back, and when you come back you also have to do it very slowly. You're going to surround the same cone that you came. Then you're going to pass in between these two cones. On the way back, you don't need to completely stop the motorcycle. You can just keep riding very slowly, as you can see. And then you're going exactly to where you were beginning the course, back to point B. So what happens is that during that day, the examiner is going to say, you're going to start from point A, so they have to change these cones positions. High-speed maneuver track, it's minimum of 50 kilometers per hour, so you're going to accelerate, you're going to pass in between these cones, then you're going to choose if you're going to take the right side of the cones or the left side of the cones. You have to train both ways because it's in the moment of the test the examiner is going to tell you, okay, you go through the left, you go through the right, and then you have to know how to do both ways. And how does this impact the test? It's going to impact the U-turn, so you have to know both because they can ask whatever in the moment of the test. You're going to do all this slalom here, do the U-turn, do the slalom, go back and brake. And then you have the brake tests. They're going to see if you can brake at 70 kilometers per hour or 90 kilometers per hour. Well, after that, if you pass in this stage, you're going to city traffics where they're going to see if you can enter and leave roundabouts in a safe way, if you can enter and leave autobahns in a safe way, how you drive on gravel, how you drive within very crowded city spaces, how you drive in the country roads, how you interact with other vehicles, with pedestrians, with trucks, with buses, with other motorcycles. They're going to see everything. They're going to check your style of driving. The examiner is going to be in another motorcycle wearing a helmet and talking to you via an intercommunicator and giving you directions of where you're going to turn, where you're going to go, and they're going to be able to see if you're taking the right side of the road, the left side of the road, if you're accessing risks. This is where the final part of the test takes toll. So this is why it's important that you drive around your city so you are familiar with the roads and with the streets. So in the moment of your test, you know exactly what you're doing. Well, next, I put here other differences. So in Brazil, after getting approved, you have a proving period of 1 year. In Sweden, this proving period it's of 2 years, which implies that if you commit any sort of felony driving, drink and driving, for example, they revoke your driver's license and you have to start the entire process and pay for everything again from the beginning. The driver's license format that they give you in Brazil that you can get, it's physical or digital, so you can opt for having a digital driver's license so you don't need to walk around with a piece of paper. But in Sweden, you can only get the physical card, which is a little plastic card. That's it. How do you think that it was this information? Did you enjoy this video? Like and subscribe to the channel. Let me know how is it in your country, in your own city. Is it more similar to Brazil? Is it more similar in Sweden? I'm not saying that any country is right or wrong here. I'm just showing you the differences, and the process is pretty different. So it's quite astonishing to see it. And I'm actually grateful for being able to take this driver's license here in Sweden, because I've become a much better driver after I had to train and to practice all these drills, so I'll be able to pass the practical exam. I had to improve my skills in U-turning, I had to improve my skills in slalom, and slow speed and high speed, and this makes me a much better driver, much more confident driver, a driver that it's going to be able to have quick reflexes and the right technique that might save my life depending on the situation that I am. So it's a much more complex, profound process that you have to go here. But at the same time, if you had to do this in Brazil, I think it would be so expensive. People wouldn't be able to afford. This would also be a problem, because people would just start driving illegally, maybe. So yeah, each country knows it best. It was such a different process that I felt compelled in making a video about it. I hope you liked. Like and subscribe. Thank you so much. See you soon. Bye bye.